Today's 5-minute families, let's talk about the Oxalidaceae. This is on page 227 in Hitchcock and Cronquist. The Oxalidaceae is the oxalis or wood sorrel family. And this is a really interesting family, of course. This is a hypogynous ovary. That means that this ovary is superior. Okay. They tend to have 5 sepals and 5 petals. So in terms of meris, this is a 5 meris family, which is typical for many dicot families. The petals tend to be distinct, and sometimes the stamens are 10. So 5 petals and sepals, stamens 10. They tend to be of unequal lengths. Sometimes you only have 5 fertile, and they're basally connate, so they're connected at the base. Pretty interesting. Lots of ways to recognize Oxalidaceae. They tend to have a sour juice, which is pretty typical. And they tend to have alternate ternately or pinnately compound leaves. Ours are all ternate, 3 leaves, compound, or 3 leaflets, compound per single leaf. But you really recognize them because they look like clover leaves. You've seen this in the woods, and all of our oxalis are ternate leaves that grow something like this. And so wood sorrel is our local member of Oxalidaceae that you're going to see a lot. There are a number of species of Oxalidaceae. In fact, you can find them all over the place, from waste places to deep in the woods. There's one species we tend to run into in the woods quite a lot. There are other species that you can run into. Oxalis organa is our more common one, which would be wood sorrel. Oxalis organa. And of course, wood sorrel, people recognize it because it tastes like sour apples, which is that sour juice. Okay, so that's Oxalidaceae. This is a hypogynous, generally 5 meris, stamens in 10 family with leaves that tend to be in 3s. They look somewhat like clover. They can be pinnately compound in other parts of the world, so you may run into them again that way. Okay. Most species are weedy, except for our one forest species, which is really dominant in our forests. Okay, after we leave the Oxalidaceae, our next family to think about is the Hypericaceae. This is the St. John's wort family. St. John's wort family is known for having flowers that are cymes. They're mostly showy. They're yellow, pale orange, pink, purple, but they're showy. They're generally hypogynous, and the sepals tend to be 5. The petals tend to be 5 and distinct. Occasionally they can be in 4s. Another hypogynous family, another 5 meris family, but sometimes they can be in 4s. The pistil also tends to be 3 to 5 carpellate. So in the ovary category, we can say 3 to 5 carpellate. The styles are distinct, which is important. And the filaments can be, this is really interesting, the stamens, they can be 5, but it's important to note that the stamens can be 5 to too numerous to count. And that's typical most of the St. John's wort that we find when we're looking around at Hypericaceae. This is the family that contains the genus Hypericum. And the species you're most likely to run into is Hypericum perforatum. Hypericum perforatum is really easy to recognize because as you hold that tiny little leaf up to the sun, you'll see the venation, of course, but you'll see all sorts of tiny little perforations that let in light from the sky. And so the species name actually tells you something about how to identify it. So you find this unknown weed that tends to have entire leaves, and you think, what is that? You hold that leaf up to the sky, and you'll know right away. Sometimes they're black dotted leaves in Hypericaceae instead of being translucent dotted. Okay. In our Hypericum, the styles may be only 3, so that's important to know. You'll also find Hypericum as a shrub, and so you'll find this around town as a shrub, and in fact the key fairly quickly just knocks out shrubs, a couple common species of shrub here, and then quickly knocks us down to our herbs, and so it's not a long key, and especially not to get to Hypericum perforatum. Last thing to note, these herbs, these leaves tend to be opposite or whorled, and so where you find one, you'll find another coming off on the opposite side. So these tend to be opposite leaved shrubs or herbs. The leaves, importantly, tend to be sessile, but sometimes they can be mildly petiolate, but most of the time they're mostly sessile to the stem. Okay, so mostly sessile leaves, perforations or dots, leaves entire. These are not severely toothed leaves. They tend to be smooth margined and opposite. Oxalidaceae Hypericaceae, that's it.